why I refused to split my business profits in the divorce. I still remember the first time I saw her, the way she laughed, head thrown back, the sparkle in her eyes like she could light up a room without even trying. Back then, I wasn't the man I am now. I was just a 20-something with a dream bigger than my wallet, scrambling to make ends meet, juggling odd jobs and late-night shifts just to keep my fledgling business afloat. I was broke, exhausted, and naive enough to think love could survive. Financial instability. She told me she liked that about me, that I had ambition, fire, that I refused to settle. I wanted to believe her. I wanted so badly to believe she'd be there through the nights I spent hunched over my laptop, coding, budgeting, and worrying, when every client rejection felt like a personal failure. I remember the nights I came home, eyes bloodshot, hands scraped from hauling inventory boxes, and she would greet me with a tired smile, sometimes barely acknowledging the effort I had poured into the day. "You work too hard," she'd say, brushing past me to check social media, scrolling through friends' vacations or brunch pictures. I'd stand there, raw and exposed, telling myself it was okay, that she understood, that she believed in me. And for a while, I convinced myself she did. When we got married, it felt like the universe had finally aligned. I thought I had everything. A woman who said she'd be my partner, who said she'd stand by me, and a vision that one day, with enough blood, sweat, and sleepless nights, would turn into something real. And it did. The business grew. It started in my garage, just me and a few makeshift tools, a table covered in blueprints and invoices, the faint smell of solder and dust lingering in the air. I spent nights frozen in winter, sweating in summer, hands cracked, back sore, heart pounding with worry and excitement in equal measure. Every cent I made, I reinvested. Every client rejection became fuel. Every small victory a glimpse of something bigger. She never joined me. She never came to the garage, never offered to help, never even asked what I was working on beyond a passing glance. She mocked the obsession, called it unhealthy, a waste of energy, told me I needed balance, as if building an empire was the same as a hobby. And yet, I pushed forward. I believed the dream, and I believed in us. When the money started coming in, I didn't complain when she spent it on luxuries, vacations, or nights out. I didn't complain when she bought herself gifts or treated her friends to dinners on what I called our earnings. I told myself I was providing. I told myself this was what love and success looked like, even if I felt empty, even if I was missing the little things that made life feel whole. Then came the day that would shatter everything. Divorce papers slid across the table like a knife, cold and sharp, cutting through every memory we had built together. She was calm, eerily calm, her smile polite but empty. She said she was tired of me being married to the business, that my work came before our marriage, before her, before anything. And then she demanded half of everything, including my business profits. I stared at the papers, my mind spinning, my chest tightening until it hurt to breathe. Half my business? Half of everything I'd bled for, sacrificed for, risked my sanity for? That wasn't support. That was theft. My business wasn't just money. It was my identity, my blood, my sacrifices. Every missed family dinner, every holiday spent alone with spreadsheets, every sleepless night and hand blisters, every rejection, every setback, every moment when I doubted myself and kept going anyway. That was my life poured into something real. She hadn't been there for any of it. She hadn't seen the long nights, the clients yelling, the loans denied, the debts piling up. She hadn't been in the trenches. And now, she wanted half. I remember sitting in my office that night, alone, staring at the framed photo on my desk. Me, standing in front of the first store I opened, grinning like I'd won the lottery even though I had nothing to show for it yet. That photo reminded me who I was, what I'd done. how I'd fought tooth and nail for my dream. And I realized that if I let her take half, I would be giving up more than money. I would be giving up my life's work, my identity, my reason for pushing through years of struggle. I refused. My lawyer tried to calm me. "This is standard in divorces," he said. "She'll claim half because she thinks she can. We'll fight it." But I knew it wasn't just a legal battle. It was a battle for my soul, for the right to keep the thing I had built from nothing, for the principle of not letting someone take credit for my sweat, my failures, and my victories. And so the battle began. Weeks of lawyers, threats, and negotiation. She went to friends, to family, painting me as a selfish, cold man who cared more about money than our marriage. She made posts on social media, subtle digs, insinuations, whispers to mutual friends that I was hiding wealth, that I didn't care about her well-being, that I was obsessed with my business to the point of cruelty. Every message, every call, every sideways glance from someone who once loved me felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I thought about giving in sometimes. I thought about what it would be like to just hand over a portion, to stop the stress, the fighting, the exhaustion. But then I'd see the photo on my desk, or hear the phone call from a client thanking me for sticking to my word, or the sight of my employees trusting me to lead them, and I knew I couldn't. This wasn't just about money. It was about integrity, about justice, about refusing to let my sacrifices be erased. Every night, I stayed up plotting, calculating, preparing. I gathered documents, receipts, contracts, everything that proved the business was mine, that the sweat equity was mine, that the growth was mine. I called clients, accountants, even old mentors who could testify to my dedication, my long hours, my personal investments. I had to armor myself with truth because she was armed with manipulation, charm, and the ability to convince others that she had earned her claim. The night before our first mediation, I barely slept. I went through every scenario, every possible argument she could throw at me. I rehearsed my own responses in the mirror, my hands shaking as I imagined her smiling, confident that she could take what I had worked for. But I wasn't going to break. I couldn't. And as I finally fell into a restless sleep, I made myself a promise. She could have the house, the cars, even the savings if she wanted. But she would not touch my business. She would not take my life's work. She would not rewrite the story of my dedication, my ambition, my sacrifices for her own gain. That business was mine, and I would fight tooth and nail through every legal loophole, every courtroom maneuver, every insult and betrayal to protect it. The first mediation was brutal. I walked into that conference room thinking I could be calm, thinking I could present myself as rational and reasonable. But the second I saw her sitting there, perfectly composed, I felt my stomach twist into knots. She looked like she had stepped out of a magazine. Hair perfectly styled, eyes sharp and calculating, lips curled in that infuriating half-smile she always wore when she thought she had the upper hand. Her lawyer didn't waste time. He leaned forward, tapping his pen on the table like a metronome of malice. "We believe that the business profits should be split evenly," he began, voice smooth, practiced, rehearsed. "After all, your client, Mrs. Akin, has supported the household during the growth of this company, contributing indirectly through domestic management and enabling Mr. Dien to focus entirely on his enterprise." I clenched my jaw so hard I thought it might crack. Indirect contribution? She hadn't cooked a single meal when I was working late, hadn't folded a laundry load when I came home after 12-hour shifts, hadn't handled the legal paperwork for any of my contracts, hadn't hustled for clients or negotiated deals. I wanted to shout, to throw the papers across the room and tell her how dare she claim any credit for my sacrifices, but I forced myself to breathe. My lawyer rose, calm, precise. "Your Honor, my client has poured his life, resources, and effort into building this business from scratch. There is no documented evidence that the respondent contributed to the creation, management, or expansion of the company. The claim for a 50% share is unfounded. The mediator leaned back, looking between us, clearly weighing the tension in the room. She was silent for a long moment, and I could feel her eyes boring into me. Then she spoke, voice soft but cutting. It's clear both parties have invested in this marriage, though perhaps in different ways. It is my role to ensure that contributions are fairly recognized. Her gaze flicked to me, then to her, and I felt a chill. Different ways? I'd given every ounce of my being to this business. She had given... what? A social presence? Occasional shopping trips for office supplies? A sigh. I could feel the anger boiling, the unfairness of it twisting in my chest. That night, I stayed awake in my office long after the mediation ended, staring at the city lights and thinking about every sacrifice I'd made, every hour spent working while she slept or shopped, every penny I reinvested instead of spending, every risk I took when I could have settled into comfort. I wrote down every detail, every memory, every effort. If I had to prove it in court, I would. She had weaponized marriage, but I had truth. And that truth was my armor. Weeks passed and the battle escalated. She started filing motions, demanding financial records, interrogating clients, even calling on former employees to claim that I had treated her unfairly. Lies piled upon lies. I remember one morning I received an email that made my blood run cold. She had claimed I had transferred funds secretly, that I was hiding profits, that my business was more valuable than I had disclosed. Panic threatened to overwhelm me, but I forced myself to think clearly. I called my accountant, who had been with me since the first days of the business, and we went through every transaction, every transfer, every invoice. Every penny was accounted for. When I saw the numbers laid bare, I felt a flicker of hope. I wasn't hiding anything. I wasn't at fault. And with the right presentation, the court would see it too. The day the deposition was scheduled, I entered the room with my lawyer. By my side, her lawyer tried every tactic to unnerve me, suggesting I had extravagant personal expenses, asking leading questions about client payments and transfers, implying I was being deceptive. My hands shook under the table, but I forced myself to stay calm, answering clearly, providing evidence, walking through every transaction with meticulous detail. I could see her smirk fading, a flicker of irritation crossing her perfectly made-up face. Victory, or at least a glimpse of it, was within reach. But just when I thought I had a handle on the situation, she escalated further. She began contacting our mutual friends, our family, even neighbors, suggesting that I was selfish, greedy, and uncaring. She painted me as the villain of a story I had lived faithfully and honestly. People I trusted looked at me with doubt in their eyes. One evening, I sat alone in my darkened apartment, scrolling through messages that twisted my own words against me, turning them into ammunition for her claims. I felt a crushing sense of isolation. Was it worth it to fight for the business? Could I endure this psychological warfare any longer? I thought about giving up, letting her take part of the company just to stop the stress, to stop the lies, to stop feeling like everyone was against me. But then I thought about the day I opened the doors to my first store, the day I landed our first big client, the nights spent pouring every dollar back into growth instead of comfort. I thought about all the employees who depended on me, the clients who trusted me, and most importantly, the integrity of what I had built with my own hands. I couldn't give up. I wouldn't. That week, I hired a forensic financial expert to scrutinize every corner of my business. She combed through records, tracked every penny, every transfer, every contract. Within days, she found discrepancies in her claims, misunderstandings, misrepresented numbers, and outright lies. Armed with her report, my lawyer prepared a counter motion that not only defended my stake, but also called into question the credibility of her accusations. When the next hearing arrived, I walked into the courtroom with a mixture of dread and determination. I could feel the eyes of everyone present, her included, measuring me, judging me, waiting for a misstep. My lawyer laid out the facts, the expert's report, and the meticulous accounting evidence. Every claim she had made was dismantled, piece by piece. The judge listened intently, flipping through documents, occasionally glancing at me with what I interpreted as a mix of curiosity and understanding. I wanted to say so much, to tell her that this business wasn't just numbers, it wasn't just profits. It was my life, my soul, my sacrifices made real, vices made. But I knew it wasn't the time for emotion. I stayed silent, letting the facts speak for me. The hearing ended with the judge taking the matter under advisement. We left the courtroom exhausted but slightly buoyed. Finally, the truth was being recognized. That night, I returned to my office, sat at my desk, and looked at the first framed photo of our company opening day. I traced the outline of the building with my finger, remembering the cold air, the client's hesitant smiles, the pride swelling in me. I realized something in that moment. The fight wasn't just about money. It was about justice. It was about refusing to let someone else claim the work of my hands as their own. And as I finally leaned back in my chair, rubbing my tired eyes, I whispered to myself, no matter how hard she tries, she won't take this from me. Not now. Not ever. Part 2 ends here, with the stakes escalating, her attacks intensifying, and the narrator fully committed to fighting for the business. Court day arrived like a storm I could see on the horizon but couldn't avoid. I woke up before dawn, my stomach twisting into knots that no amount of coffee could settle. My suit felt tighter than usual, or maybe it was the weight of the past, months pressing down on my chest. Every document, every spreadsheet, every carefully prepared exhibit sat in my briefcase like soldiers ready for battle. When my lawyer and I walked into the courtroom, it felt surreal. The polished wood, the echo of footsteps, the murmurs of people waiting for their cases, it all seemed distant, almost dreamlike. And there she was, sitting across from me, the perfect picture of composure, hair pulled into that meticulous bun, eyes cold, calculating, lips pressed into a thin line. She smiled at me. A flash of triumph I wanted to punch through. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. She was older than me by a decade, experienced, and I could feel the weight of her gaze as she sorted through the case files. Every click of her pen a reminder that this wasn't just about me. It was about whether the truth would survive scrutiny. The first few hours were procedural, lawyers presenting motions, arguments over admissibility of evidence. Then it happened. She took the stand, calm, collected. She told the story she'd been rehearsing for months, painting herself as a supportive partner whose sacrifices had been overlooked. She claimed sleepless nights, the emotional labor of maintaining a household, of supporting me as I built my empire. I wanted to laugh, but I swallowed it down. My lawyer objected to several points. The judge sustained some, dismissed others, but the damage lingered. The courtroom air felt thick, almost suffocating. And then it was my turn. I rose, heart hammering, and for a moment I let the fear. I talked about the nights I went without sleep because I had a client presentation the next morning, about the unpaid bills I ignored so I could pay employees on time, about the way I risked my entire life savings on ideas that might have failed, but ultimately succeeded. I presented every piece of evidence, every email, every ledger entry, every witness affidavit. I spoke about my employees, the clients who trusted me, and the life I had poured into this company. I didn't speak angrily. I didn't raise my voice. I spoke with the raw truth, the kind that can't be manipulated or denied. I could see her expression changing, the carefully cultivated mask of calm starting to crack. I wasn't sure if It was panic, frustration, or fear. But for the first time, she looked human, vulnerable, and I felt a surge of grim satisfaction. Then came the hardest part, the cross-examination. Her lawyer was relentless, asking pointed questions, twisting words, insinuating dishonesty, trying to make me flinch, trying to make me doubt myself on the stand. My hands shook, my throat burned, but I held firm. Every answer was backed with documentation, every claim disproven with undeniable proof. Hours passed, and my voice grew hoarse, my body exhausted. But I kept going. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for justice, for the right to claim the sweat of my own hands, for the principle that effort and sacrifice cannot be stolen. At one point, she blurted out a statement that made my blood boil. "He doesn't care about me or the marriage, only the money." The courtroom fell silent, and I felt every eye on me, waiting. I paused, took a breath, and looked straight at her. "I've never loved money more than my family," I said, voice steady, stronger than I felt. "But this business, this company, is not money. It is the life I built, the nights I sacrificed, the risks I took. I have always provided for my family, and I will continue to provide for my children. But to claim that I should give away something I built with my own hands because the marriage failed, that is not justice. That is theft." The judge leaned forward slightly, pen poised, and I knew she was listening. Every word mattered. Every pause mattered. The rest of the day was a blur of testimony, objections, and more evidence. Witnesses spoke, employees, accountants, clients, confirming my story, validating the sacrifices I had made, and undermining every false claim she tried to introduce. She sat there, increasingly frustrated, whispering to her lawyer, flipping through documents, her composure slipping with every passing hour. By the time the session ended, it was late evening. I left the courtroom feeling drained, every muscle in my body aching, every nerve frayed. But amidst the exhaustion was a sense of quiet vindication. I had spoken my truth, faced the lies, and refused to back down. Back at my office, I sat alone in the dark, letting the silence wrap around me. The city lights flickered outside the window, and I thought about everything that had led me here. The sacrifices, the victories, the nights I thought I couldn't go on. I realized something profound. No one could take from me what I had truly earned, what I had built with integrity and effort. Not her, not her lies, not even the weight of the courtroom itself. And yet, I couldn't ignore the toll it had taken. The sleepless nights, the anxiety, the moments with friends and family I had lost while fighting for what was mine. It was a hollow victory in many ways, because even if I won, the scars would remain. But I also knew that I had discovered a strength within myself I didn't know existed, a resilience forged in fire, a resolve that would carry me through whatever came next. That night, I picked up my phone and looked at the photos of my company's early days, the messy garage, the prototype boards, the empty office chairs waiting for the first employees. I traced them with my fingers, remembering the grind, the struggle, the moments of despair and triumph intertwined. And I smiled, not with joy, but with recognition. This was mine. Every ounce, every drop of effort, every sleepless night belonged to me, and no court, no person, no betrayal could take that away. The battle wasn't over, but I was ready. Ready to face the final arguments, ready to hear the judgment, ready to stand firm and protect the life I had built. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about identity, about respect, about proving to myself and the world that I would never let someone else claim the fruits of my labor as their own. And in that moment, exhausted and alone, I whispered to myself. Bring it on. I am ready. The days leading up to the final ruling were some of the longest of my life. Each morning I woke with a sense of dread. Each night I went to bed with anxiety gnawing at my chest. I spent every moment not working poring over the case files, checking and double-checking every document, every witness statement, every financial report. The weight of the past months, the lies, the accusations, the betrayals, pressed down on me like a physical force. But I had to stay steady. I had to remain unshakable. I knew that if I faltered, even for a second, it could cost me everything. The final day of court arrived, and the tension was palpable. I walked in with my lawyer, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and determination. The air smelled of polished wood and old paper, mingling with the faint scent of coffee from the hallway. People filled the gallery. Friends, family, strangers curious about the drama of a high-stakes divorce involving a successful business. And there she was, sitting across the room, her eyes locked on me, a smug smile she thought could intimidate. She hadn't changed her approach. She still wore her armor of composure, but I could see the flickers of frustration behind it. The judge, an older woman with a reputation for fairness and an intimidating presence, entered and called the court to order. The room went silent, and I could feel my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The judge began by summarizing the case, outlining the evidence, the testimonies, and the arguments presented by both sides. She spoke slowly, deliberately, emphasizing points that mattered. My documented sacrifices, the expert analysis of the business, the lack of tangible contributions on her part. I listened, barely breathing, as she methodically dissected the claims she had made, exposing inconsistencies and exaggerations. I could see her lawyer flinch at times, and I felt a small, almost imperceptible surge of relief. Then came the moment of truth, the announcement of the ruling. The judge leaned forward, her gaze piercing, her voice calm but commanding. After careful consideration of the evidence, testimonies, and financial records, it is the determination of this court that the business in question is the sole property of the petitioner. The respondent's claim to 50% of the business profits is hereby denied. My stomach dropped, and then a wave of relief and disbelief crashed over me. I wanted to laugh, cry, and scream all at once. After months of tension, sleepless nights, and emotional torment, the truth had prevailed. She sat there, her face a mixture of shock and fury. I could almost hear her thoughts, the disbelief that her carefully constructed narrative had failed. She tried to maintain composure, but her clenched jaw and narrowed eyes betrayed her. I wanted to feel satisfaction, to gloat, but all I felt was exhaustion and a quiet sense of justice. I had fought for what was rightfully mine, and the court had acknowledged it. Leaving the courtroom, I felt the weight of the months lift slightly, replaced by a cautious sense of freedom. My lawyer clapped me on the back, congratulating me, but I barely registered it. I stepped outside, the cool air hitting my face, and for the first time in weeks I could breathe deeply. The city stretched before me, lights twinkling like stars, and I felt a strange combination of gratitude and disbelief. I had survived. I had protected what I had built. I had stood firm against lies, manipulation, and betrayal, and I had won. Back at my office, I sat in silence, reflecting on the journey. I thought about the sacrifices, the nights of exhaustion, the financial risks, the personal relationships strained and sometimes broken. I thought about the emotional toll, the loneliness, the moments I had doubted myself. And I realized something profound. This victory wasn't just about money or business. It was about proving to myself that integrity, perseverance, and truth mattered more than manipulation, charm, or deceit. It was about standing firm, even when the world seemed stacked against me, even when the people I loved most had turned against me. I looked around my office, at the framed photos of the early days, the messy garage, the first storefront, the prototype boards, and I smiled. A small, quiet smile. Those memories weren't just pictures. They were reminders of my journey, of the grit and determination that had brought me here. I had created something real, something tangible, something that no one could take from me. Not her, not the court, not circumstance. The months that followed were quieter, but they were not without their challenges. I focused on my business, investing in growth, expanding operations, and rebuilding my sense of normalcy. I reconnected with friends I had lost touch with during the chaos, and I allowed myself to enjoy the small victories. Closing a big deal, launching a new product, seeing my team thrive. I had been consumed by the fight for so long that even small successes felt monumental. But the experience left scars, emotional ones that didn't fade as easily as the legal battles. I had learned hard lessons about trust, about love, about the vulnerability of exposing your life to someone who can turn it against you. I had learned that not everyone who says they support you truly does, and that some people, when faced with the consequences of their own choices, will attempt to claim what isn't theirs. I had also learned that standing up for yourself is not just about fighting. It's about knowing your worth, your effort, and your limits, and refusing to allow others to diminish them. Late one night, sitting alone in the office with only the hum of the city outside and the faint glow of my computer screen, I reflected on the journey. I thought about her, about the marriage, about the love that had turned bitter and the betrayal that had cut deep. And I understood that I would carry this with me forever, not as a source of bitterness, but as a reminder of my resilience, my determination, and my ability to rise above manipulation and deceit. I whispered into the quiet room, a mantra that had carried me through the darkest nights. I built this. I earned this. And no one can take it from me. And as I finally leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes and allowing myself a moment of rest, I knew that while the legal battle was over, the lessons would last a lifetime. I had faced betrayal, deceit, and greed. And I had emerged not just victorious in the courtroom, but stronger, wiser, and more determined to protect what truly mattered to me. The business was safe, my integrity intact. And though the path ahead was still uncertain, I felt ready. Ready to continue building, to continue fighting, and to continue living a life defined by effort, honesty, and perseverance. Am I wrong for refusing to split what I built with someone who never truly earned it?